Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Love on Campus acknowledges the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians of the Adelaide Plains, land never ceded. We pay our respects to elders past and present and recognise the rich living traditions of storytelling and knowledge of this country. We also extend respect to all Aboriginal, Torres Strait and First Nations, recognising the continuation of cultural, spiritual and educational practices.
Hi everyone and welcome back to the Love on Campus podcast. I'm here today with Dr. Amy Matthews.
Hello.
And Kathleen Stanley.
Hello.
And I'm Georgia. Today we're talking about the vacation romance subgenre, which is super fun and exciting. And
Which I am super ready for because it's freezing today.
Yeah, it's so cold.
Imagining being on a beach.
Holiday.
It's definitely having its moment, I think. If we're all familiar with Emily Henry, she's certainly taken the vacation romance and absolutely exploded the subgenre.
Definitely.
So
I feel like it's her aesthetic.
yeah, it's like it's a whole thing. So I thought I would start by asking you guys, what is the most necessary, most defining feature about a vacation romance? Which feels relatively obvious, a question.
You need to go on holiday.
But I was like, does there need to be a minimum radius they have to be from home?
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Like a
That's interesting.
like
I think
staycation?
for me the key is that it needs to be drool-worthy, like Instagrammable, like desirable, like your dream vacation. Like you've got to wish you were there.
Oh, really? So you wouldn't think it would be like my worst vacation and everything is like nightmare-y?
Nah, that does not interest me. I want to feel like, because I may have said this before or not, but I'm a bit obsessed with like fantasy hotels and fantasy holidays. If I get
I think just to us. I don't know if you've said that.
I get stuck. If I've got writer's block or anything, I just have a little fantasy holiday where I like look up hotels and cities and places.
Oh my God, I have a YouTube video for you. We'll discuss off air.
Like I was thinking like staycations. Like I don't know who could write a romance about staycationing. You have to have a great idea. But like, is it far enough away?
Not for me.
No.
I really want I want to luxuriate in like somewhere. I think it's like armchair travel, and particularly post-COVID.
Yeah.
I really want to feel like I've had a little armchair holiday.
I think that it's staycation is enough to count as vacation romance technically, but I think if we're going for what we probably prefer, I would agree that I'd like it to be a little bit more adventurous or a little bit more outside of my comfort zone.
And I think there's, for me, they fall into two camps. One is like luxury,
Yeah.
and the second one is nature. That it's like reconnecting with nature somehow.
Yeah.
So there might be, you know, like Montana or the woods or I don't know, the ocean. There's been a few cruise ship ones lately, haven't there? That's luxury and nature.
Well, I think I'm finding like there's beach ones, like there's beach romance where they go on like a little beach holiday, or then there's like the big tourist spots where it's places in Italy or Paris or that sort of thing.
Or cabins. There's often like cabiny in the woods. There's a lot of like woodsy nature.
Those ones you find the most in a Christmas romance.
Yeah,
So,
it's that.
and that's
There
why
are
I'm like,
summer
it's
ones
interesting.
too, though. There are like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, I think they've been cropping up lately. Hold on, let me look it up. There's been a few this year, which is 2023. Where is it? I was just looking at it.
I just find your comment really interesting, Amy, about it being like either luxury or nature or like far away and you really want to take it out, because that's actually not like a Christmas vacation romance is very rarely ticking those boxes.
It's
but it would
more a
still
home-
it would
home
still
thing.
be but it's doing something different. But it would still be a vacation romance, but then it's not categorized that. It's categorized Christmas. So
Holiday, like holiday versus vacation. Do you know what I mean when I say like holiday as in like Christmas, Easter,
like
that sort of
seasonal
thing, like a seasonal thing, or like a vacation where it's an actual trip.
Yeah.
Difference.
Yeah, that's true.
the purpose behind it is different.
Yeah, because the Christmas ones are so much about family and often going home.
Yeah.
Trying to find a new home.
Sometimes I think sometimes it's even about escaping elements of your home and going somewhere because it's a break. And, you know,
There's
it's
just,
a winter break. And
this aesthetic I'm thinking of, because it keeps popping up in my feed this year, which is like woodsy, like lakes and American woods. So there's like, I'm looking at Annie Rain's The Matchbreaker Summer, but there was also You Mean Everything. There's a few little ones that keep popping up in my feed that are really, but it might be because I write Westerns, so they're targeting me. I don't know. But
no, but I think you're right. I think that there's a shift to that because we just came off of the beach ones, and I think we also just came off of cruise. There was a few cruise ship
there were
ones.
a lot of yachts and cruise ships.
Yeah, I think we've just come off the water. And now if we're going to have it water adjacent, it's lakes, but it's like, we're going into the forest. It's cottage core vibes.
Yeah, I think cottagecore is the thing right now.
Yeah, I think so. I would say
hammocks and fire pits and
my type of vacation. I'm not a water baby.
flannel shirts, beanies, unshaven
Canadian
men.
Rockies, sign me up. Alaska, love it.
Oh God, that's funny. See, I like I want big city. Like I want Paris. I want Amalfi Coast. I want.
Okay, so there's a lot set in Italy and Greece.
Yeah,
a lot.
That.
European vacation, like that
European
kind of vibe.
vacation is like that's like a vacation
and that
romance.
I feel like is total post-COVID, because I think at first it got very cozy and it got very local, like
Emily
somewhere,
Henry.
like somewhere you could go that was soothing, comforting and local. Whereas now I think we're kind of back to I want to go and stay at the Ritz.
Yeah.
We're ready to re-enter the wider world now. And
what about an Airbnb romance? Wouldn't that be kind of fun? Sorry, I'm thinking about like how you could write something and how Airbnb you could have like a hot host. And
shared bed.
Tenant. Yeah.
What? We've both booked the same house the same weekend?
Yeah.
That's a movie.
That's a movie. That is a Netflix movie.
It's a Netflix movie.
Excellent. I should write for Netflix.
Yeah.
It's a Netflix movie. It's set in Rome or something.
Yeah, it is.
Cat Graham.
Oh God, but yeah.
Georgia and I both lit up. We were like, we've watched this.
I don't know, but I'm in like a vacation romance mode with because currently I'm writing one set in Paris. And so I'm big into that.
It.
Yeah. But I don't know, but maybe that's just my own personal interest. Like Emily Henry's beach read, it's set on Lake Michigan or like the big lake in America that kind of looks like a beach.
Right. That is the one I have not yet read.
And that is fine. And I liked the book a lot, but the setting of it is not enough for me.
Right. What about Book Lovers, where she's in that's the cottagey small town thing, but she doesn't love the small town.
Yeah. Well,
we all know I love a small town.
Yeah, well, I probably align with Nora. I don't really like a small town. So maybe it just doesn't that sort of vacation. Is not
I don't necessarily like a small town in reality. I like small towns how they're written in books.
Particularly when it's snowing.
Yes, romanticized versions. Or like up in the hills in the forest. So I stayed in an Airbnb just this weekend gone. And that would be the cutest place to write a romance about. Like the whole thing up there is so cute.
Did it have like a tower thing?
Yeah, it was literally medieval castle kind of
like a castle.
It was a tower. And I'll have to show you guys some photos, but it was incredible. And even out the front, they had like a sword and a stone.
We may need to even put a photo on our Instagram for the people listening.
So you understand what this Airbnb is. I stayed in Olinda in Victoria. And that whole place is very, it's up in the Dandenongs and there's all these, trees and it's the very cottage core kind of thing. But this was sort of, medieval because they've got kind of some of that aesthetic up there. And it's just very... the minute I rocked up, I was like, oh, there's a romance novel here.
Because it's a fantasy, right?
Yeah, it was so fantastical.
Like a fantasy location. Oh, that's actually helping me link into
segue.
I was reading.
Georgia working her book out during these podcasts. I hope somebody else out there has a notebook and they're also working their things out.
Okay, so I was reading Popular Romance and Its Readers by Lynn Pierce, and in it, she's talking about romantic locations.
Yeah.
And she says that she sort of defines them as foreign lands, if you will. These foreign lands are one of the strategic means by which the subject thinks or wills herself into an alternative future, is the first thing. And then the second quote I have is, if love itself is a journey into entirely new life, then the value of foreign lands experienced together is doubled by it. Our own surprises are combined with those of the unknown land, of the foreign beautiful city. Then light falls even in the dullest minds, and the lively ones become full of figure.
Oh,
So she's basically saying that's like it's like doubling on the fantasy.
yeah.
I was going to say, all I could think about was fantasy romance, like actual
Yeah.
supernatural fantasy romance, as you were saying that.
I think there are two elements there. One is getting your person out of their real banal world, because I think romance, falling in love is an enchantment, right?
Ooh,
Yeah.
It's magical.
what a line. Love it.
TM. It's a magical feeling, and the getting them away from banality into a space where enchantment can happen, I think allows you to step into the story world. But then also I think there's a difference here between if the two people are on vacation versus falling in love with a local.
Yeah.
So like if we're talking book lovers, she's in a foreign land.
Yeah.
But
and
it's-
he's in his original land.
And he's in his original land, and it's like, but it also.
But he's not from there, though. Like,
Yeah.
it's still...
No, he is from there.
No, as in, like, because he's a city, because he's, like, lives in the city.
He lives in the city, but it is his original homeland.
Yeah.
But like it sort of like forces, it takes a character and puts them either in like a, well, for Nora in Book Lovers, it's an uncomfortable location or like a unfamiliar
they're
one.
Fascinating. Sorry to cut you off, but just going back a step to what you both were saying there, they're interesting because New York is where she's from. That's her original home. Whereas Charlie is from, I forget the town. What's the town?
Oh, good question.
It's
a
like
cute-
they're
it's a
both
cute
inhabiting each other's hometowns. Is that what you're finding
Well, I
interesting
think
about it?
is that she's comfortable in her place of origin and he's deeply uncomfortable in his place of origin.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because her journey doesn't require her to leave her place.
Yeah. But she
That's just
does go
different.
through a journey when she does leave.
Yeah. That's interesting. I haven't thought
Sunshine
about that.
Falls.
Sunshine
Sunshine
Falls.
Falls.
For some reason, I want to say Moose Springs, but I feel like that's a title of one of your
That's
Christmas things.
the Sarah Morgenthaler books that I talk about all the time that I love. But that is like, that's a vacation romance. At least the first one is.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think that the location is relevant to then the storyline that would occur.
Well, and okay, so if you've two people on vacation falling in love, there's this sense of fun and being outside your comfort zone, being able to be someone else. Like
Yeah, well, that's like
I'm
the
holiday,
unhoneymoon.
Amy.
That's the unhoneymooners. Have you guys read Christina
It's
Lauren's?
on my
Oh,
bookshelf, but I
yes,
haven't
I
read it
have.
yet.
Yeah, so like they're a couple who aren't a couple, like they're a fake relationship actually, who go on a honeymoon for somebody else, like somebody else's honeymoon. They go on it and like they're both in vacation mode, and that's when they let all their walls down because they kind of are like, oh, we're in vacation. You know
And
what I
going
mean?
back to
Yeah.
last episode where we were talking about masks and essence, I think on vacation you don't wear the same mask. Your everyday mask is gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're a little bit more vulnerable. It's like when you're in this new space, this new area, like you're not.
But also you can be
Comfortable?
bolder.
Yeah, that's what the unhoneymooners fits this perfectly. It's literally about how they both have these huge masks up and they've been pretending and all of this stuff beforehand because they kind of hate each other. It's very enemies to lovers sort of type vibes.
Definitely.
And then they go on vacation and they just strip all the walls down.
Yeah, there's the barriers aren't there that they usually occur with. There's like sort of newer ones. I don't know. It's,
Yeah, they just sort of like become different people while they're on vacation almost. But it's
Yeah.
like the people that they've been hiding from each other really, but they haven't dealt with all their insecurities. So then they come back from vacation and all those walls come back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really interested now in like how the location literally impacts the characters. I think that's interesting. Because sorry, I don't want to keep talking about my book.
Let's keep
But
talking about your
we're gonna
book
keep
because
talking about it.
eventually we'll get to a point where we're done.
Selling itself here.
Well, like the hero, the main male protagonist he's from there. He's from Paris and she is visiting Paris. And so what happens, you mentioned to Amy, where one of the people is from there and one of the people is visiting. Like what dynamic does that cause? And
Yeah, so
Because
she's on vacation but he's on his everyday him.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he's already in his essence.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, or he's got his social mask up, one or the other.
See, and that's I think the difference
Yeah.
between book lovers is that Charlie still has a mask even when he's back home.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Whereas so it's like a third option.
His mask sort of occurs when he goes back home, would you say?
I think he's got two masks.
Yeah. And she meets him she meets him when he's being corporate and like shark.
Yep.
And then she meets him in this little bookstore in the context of his family, and the contrast is jarring, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And both versions
really,
both versions he's masking the two, like the different sides of himself. Like he separates them.
His journey is about the moment where they become synthesized. He becomes one person, not two split people.
Well, she sees both as well, I suppose, is the idea. She knows him in New York and she knows him at home.
And she actually likes him more.
Yeah.
She's seen both.
Yeah. She actually doesn't, like, she and her insecurity of the corporate side of herself, she doesn't love him at first for that. She loves him for the other things. So I'm like, you can't, but that won't fit your book, Georgia.
No.
That won't apply.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. I don't know, like, would he be in his essence more, or are you more in your essence when you're on vacation? Like, who's the one?
I think he'd be a different version of himself, right? So he's meeting Vacation, what's her name again?
Freya.
Vacation Freya. But then you've also got the issue of when you're on vacation and you go to Paris, you're like, this is amazing. Look, berets and baguettes.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like croissant. And I get to climb the Eiffel Tower and go to the Louvre, and that's all the touristy stuff, right? Whereas he's living an authentic life there.
Yeah.
And if you did move there, the touristy stuff falls away and you live a different life. Like, you have to then reconcile the romance to banal everyday life.
So does he have to take on maybe her perspective for a little bit, like the touristy?
Yeah, but they probably eventually have to take on each other's perspective.
Yeah,
right?
she needs to take on the sort of, domestic.
Because this is reminding me, before we came on air, we were talking about Sydney. And, if you visit Sydney as a tourist, you're like, this is fabulous. In my fantasy world, I have a house on, Lavender Bay where I have a little dinghy and I go out on the ocean every morning and maybe I go for a swim and, I'll get a cocktail at sunset. And in reality, we would all be living in a far suburb, commuting 6.5 hours a day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
anyone who's had to drive from Parramatta to the city in any hour of the day, not just peak.
Like, I suppose, like, it's supposed to set in like Montmartre of Paris.
Of course.
And so, of course. But, and that's really romantic and that has its things about it. But maybe he's just like, I like it up here, but God, it takes a lot to get down. There's a lot of stairs.
Every time I go and buy my baguette, I have to climb the hundreds.
Have you seen that episode of Friends where it's like a latest season where Chandler and Monica, they have the surrogate for the baby. They're like adopting and she's still pregnant and she comes to New York and she wants to do all the touristy things. But New York for them is not. It's just where they live. It's been their home their whole lives. And Chandler takes it everywhere and she comes back and like he's so excited because he did all of the touristy things.
That. I thought you were going to say the scene, because we were talking about stairs, I thought you were going to say the scene where Ross is trying to get the couch up and he's like, pivot. I was like, that's a weird thing to bring up. But Chandler loving New York.
He like fell in love with New York and forgot that the city had all these things that you could be excited about.
Yeah.
Because he's just thought of it as home for so long and he's actually had sort of a bit of a negative connotation to all the touristy idea, like things, because he's forgotten to appreciate those parts of his city.
In a vacation romance, you kind of want Paris to stay magical, right?
Yeah,
that's the
you
fantasy.
want it to hit.
But I wonder if that's what I mean. Maybe she could take him. She could be like, I haven't done all these things. And at first he's like, oh, you want to do the touristy things? And she shows him, like he re-sees Paris through her eyes.
It's a good way just to structure it, I guess.
And he remembers it's a beautiful place.
It's quite funny. And where are you from? Cleveland, Ohio. Sounds magical.
Yeah. Oh,
that's funny.
So there's something magical at just being about, where are you from? Paris.
But you know what? In real life, people really do have different. Like, I feel like I'm different on holidays. Like when I'm in real relaxed mode, not when I'm visiting.
I get more stressed on holidays.
I'm way more chilled.
I'm so much more
stressed. I'm like hate not being in my bed, and I'm also the organizer.
My brother's like that too. My brother's a horrible person to travel with.
I'm not entirely chilled because I like wake up really early and I don't sleep terribly well.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, so we have to catch a train in like a couple of days and we have to do this and this and this. Like, I'm the planner. And so I get way more stressed out when I'm anywhere else.
My husband is usually a high stress person, and we went on holiday for the very first time on our second anniversary. We hadn't gone on holiday. We've been together by this stage for 4 years and never done one holiday. And we went on a cruise. This was obviously way pre-COVID. we went on a cruise and it was like I met him for the first time. I was like, who are you? I was like, because he's just like such a different person. He had avocado on toast, and this sounds so stupid, but my husband originally, before the cruise, would never eat avocado on toast. He was like, no, I don't like avocado on toast. And then on our cruise, he was like, I'm going to have avocado on toast. And I literally almost dropped my plate. I was like, who are you and what have you done with my husband?
I feel like even if I am
I
more
love
stressed,
this new person.
even if I am more stressed, I'm like more in my essence. I don't know how that makes sense. I'm like also more mask up, but I'm also more in my essence, like so I'm going away soon and I'm a little bit like, oh, can't wait to just like relax into it and just be whoever.
And this may be me being a parent as well, but it's the sense of I have no responsibilities to anyone. Like I can just do whatever I want.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. And that's,
no one can reach me on holiday. My phone is off.
Just get a coffee right now. I can just get a coffee right now.
Yeah.
If I wanted to be an idiot in the street, I could, because I don't know anyone here.
And vacation, for me, Kathleen, is so much braver. She does all these wild things on holiday. Like she does the fun stuff. She'll go on a roller coaster. She won't go on a roller coaster at home. But she would be like, hell yeah, I'm here. I'm only at Disneyland once. I'm going on everything. I'm doing it all. Like, why do I not live every day of my life like that? Because, you know, only in a romance book are you that kind of sunshine.
So you're getting on something there about being present in the moment too.
Yes.
Like when you're on vacation, you're so present.
Yeah.
And
you're less caught up in your worries and your like real life. And I think that speaks a lot to how you can explore character and character essence and then masks and their internal journeys and internal feelings. Like it's a really good way to sort of throw your character into a new
Okay, so we know that Georgia would set a book in Paris and is in fact jetting off to Paris in a couple of weeks. But where would you set a book, Kathleen, if you had your ideal?
Alaska. I was going to say Alaska. That was really quick.
Didn't even get the sentence.
I have said this many a time.
Elaborate.
I love the idea of Alaska. I don't know, it's so romantic to me, but I am obviously studying Christmas romances, and so there is a lot set in those areas.
There's like a lot of snow.
Yeah, I mean, probably not in reality. We're talking writing a book. Like
it's like has implied. It has implied. I was talking about this the other day with like an implied setting and implied expectations of it. Like you do associate Alaska then with snow, and then you're associating snow with Christmas.
It's probably one of the places in the Western world that is still a frontier.
Yeah.
And I just think that I would romanticize it. Like it would not be, for me, it's not about the reality of Alaska or what it's really like there. I don't really have an interest in capturing that. That's for literary fiction, in my opinion. In a romance, it's about playing up all the ways that that's romantic and beautiful, and the northern lights and the beautiful trees and
the cute bears.
Oh yeah, they're all friendly. The moose and the bears and the deer, they're all very friendly. It's Snow White come to life. I will walk along singing my bird song, and I won't be scared of birds.
Proposal. We think about Ryan Reynolds.
That's a good one as well. Well, I was just going to say,
or Canada. I feel like the Canadian Rockies, like these elements. Can you get my aesthetic?
Oh look, there's a Mountie.
Hot flannel.
Oh, this is so not my vibe. So not. I was just saying, like,
there's lumberjacks.
Yeah. He's very clean though in my head. Like he's clean.
Well, Canadians are very neat and tidy.
Yes, he's a neat. That's what I mean. I'm like, I've gone for a Canadian lumberjack. He's very polite and kind.
I was thinking like everything seems more possible on vacation, and therefore plot and like these ideas of plot can be more possible. Like I was just thinking about how when I was in London, I was walking around like a really sort of like fancy area. I was like, I could run into Harry Styles right now and we would fall in love. Like it would happen. I was like, this is so possible. Like
Harry,
it will happen.
Listening, you'd be mad.
Oh, Georgia, you're the funniest person I've ever met. I love it.
And then I was like in Paris and I was like, I would have a little fling with an artist. Like it will happen, and I know it will. Like
you might meet Charles Leclerc. He's pretty good looking if anyone's watched the Formula One show.
Oh yes. Oh, wouldn't I just? I'd love that. But like,
Harry, you better hurry up.
I just think that there's like so much possibility as well, and so you decide to set a book in London or like a vacation in London, and then she meets like a rock star and they fall in love, and that just feels more possible in a vacation setting.
Like I know the day my brother moved to London, he went to get dumplings and they were sitting at like this counter, and he was right next to Kenneth Branagh. And then when we were in London, we went to see the Book of Mormon, and Helena Bonham Carter was sitting right in front of me.
If this doesn't happen to me when I'm in London, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have so many people I want to run into. Tom Holland?
He's a bit young for me, but go for it.
Perfect age for me.
Yeah, true. When I went to LA, it was like the same thing.
Yeah.
Like I was like, we've seen so many celebrities, and it was just like,
It just seems more possible.
Yeah,
But also
like-
maybe that's specific locations. Like,
but I don't run into Chris Hemsworth here. Like, what's going on?
But I feel like if someone like came to Australia, they'd be like, it's going to happen.
Yeah, the Americans who
Yeah.
come here probably
Happen.
run into him all the time. Wait, Amy, what was your vacation place?
Yes.
Oh, this is good. I actually just wrote a book set in Peru, which I never thought I would do because that's not really on my bucket list, but it was really fun to research it. I did some really fun armchair travel with that book.
Yeah.
They climb Machu
Such a
Picchu.
unique one.
Yeah, I don't know. I like snow too. I love skiing, so
Yeah.
probably somewhere skiing. And I've never had a white Christmas, so I would like to maybe do a white
I've never
Christmas.
seen snow.
Maybe one day we'll write a book together.
Maybe I just love the idea of a white Christmas. But I love skiing, so I would just be out skiing all
To
the
be
time.
fair, your Westerns, like they give me a little bit of armchair.
Yeah,
travel.
that is part of the idea.
Yeah.
And that's,
Historicals do that, don't
Yeah,
they?
they do.
They do, because I think that's very similar to vacation because you're getting out of your world
Yeah,
into
it's like
an
a
enchantment.
Time
I think
travel.
Romanticy does it too.
Yeah.
Like you're going to a fairy tale world.
Yeah, the
Yes.
idea of foreign lands.
Yeah,
yeah.
but-
Well,
But the Westerns certainly are around that cottage core stuff, right? Like
yeah,
pine trees and meadows and rivers and baking and all that stuff.
And there's a bit of colonisation wrapped up in that, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
yeah.
whites.
Yeah.
Those of us who are white, which is me and everyone
yeah.
else sitting in this podcast room. There is like I think there's a very different relationship we have to these kind of areas and these things and these ideas.
Yeah.
That's tied back to colonisation.
Absolutely. And I think The White Lotus does that really well. With
Yes.
it's not romance, but it really tackles the complexity of place.
The
while
first one with
still
Hawaii. Was it Hawaii?
doing kind of like this luxury hotel thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it
What
was
was the first one,
Hawaii.
Hawaii?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
That
second
was
one's Italy.
specifically
And the
good.
third one's going to be Thailand, apparently.
Oh, really? Didn't he want to do like a spiritual retreat or something that they do? I think he really is looking into like how white people love like a Balinese spiritual retreat where they're like essentially appropriating a lot of Eastern cultures.
There's a really bad Jennifer Lopez movie that came out recently. I think it's on Amazon that touches on this. Like, it's like Shotgun Wedding. Or, no, not Shotgun Wedding. Something Wedding.
Yeah, I know the one you mean. I
Yeah,
haven't seen
with
it,
Josh Duhamel or
that
whatever.
one touches on that.
It does actually. They end up getting married in like the Philippines. It's like an island in the Philippines, and it talks about the difference between these rich people who've come here for a like holiday and everything, and versus like the reality of real life and these horrible attitudes a lot of these rich Americans have
Yeah.
to the locals because they get held up by a
that
crime. They get held up by a crime thing, and they're all like, "Oh, these like their attitude is so racially based, and it's so gross." And it turns out that it's actually like not what it seems, and it kind of it's the only redeeming part of that movie probably is that they're actually kind of like trying to have a nuanced conversation about it. I wouldn't say they're necessarily doing a great job, but
they try.
they're trying. They're trying.
Well, that's why stuff set in Hawaii as of late to me feels really sort of insensitive, and like people going to Hawaii because there's lots of like natural resources and degradation happening in.
I think all tourism is like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But specifically, I feel like I've heard a lot of like narratives and rhetoric on Hawaii, though I'm not really sure I could explain why. And so I see like lots of
Well, The White Lotus did at least go into that.
yeah,
Yeah,
they
definitely did.
Well, they had like a sort of contrast between the workers and the guests was sort of the idea, right?
But also, I think, you can't get away from the fact that our desire to take vacations is a big problem with climate change as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So it is really a fantasy. But this is where maybe reading it in a book means you can go to Paris all the time.
And you can forget that
100%.
climate change exists a little bit. But also we shouldn't. Yeah.
No, definitely.
I think, I just think it's interesting because I'm going to reiterate what this quote said, where when you're in like a foreign land, when you're in the vacation setting, the light falls even in the dullest minds and the lively ones become full of figure. Like it's just fully invigorating
Yeah.
these characters and the plot, and like it's really like emphasizing them.
So last episode we were talking about the black moment. What is there something unique about a vacation romance and the black moment? Like, is there a certain kind of black moment that happens on vacation books?
Well, I was going to say the ending was probably a bit of an airport scene. But that's not.
Well, I would think that,
That's
it would be
external
coming
thing.
back to reality, right? Like, how do you translate the person you met and the person you were on vacation back to real life? Like, how do your lives come back together?
Yes.
How do you work?
Do you put the mask back on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big,
not
big
even
bit.
do you put it on? How do you keep it off? I
Yeah.
think because it's more like it'll naturally just come back on when you go back to real life.
Yeah, because if we talk about book lovers, Nora, when she's away, is sort of, Charlie says to her, well, why wouldn't you be an editor? Like, why? You know, what's stopping
they
you?
struggle
What's-
to end on
Yeah, exactly. He's like, blah, 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 why wouldn't you do this? Like, maybe you should try it. And she talks about her financial worries and things like that. And then it's about going back to New York and thinking about whether that should happen for her and if she wants it to happen.
And there is like a moment where that's also tied. She can only do it because when her sister says, stop taking care of me, I'm a grown-ass adult,
Yeah.
she can give up the financial pressure of caring for her
Yeah.
sister, and that means she can take the risk and be the editor. So it's like two emotional journeys coming off at once there.
Yeah.
And also while she's on vacation, she tries it on for a bit.
Yeah.
She tries it on, and vacation her is able to let her mask
true.
down enough to try it on for a bit.
And like let her worries sort of simmer back, like sit back and.
It's also something she
Yeah.
then has to give up once she's tried it. You don't know what I mean? Like, it can be just a dream or a fantasy that she always thinks she might do one day. But once you've tried it, you know what sacrifice you're giving up. And I think that's the thing about romance is that once you've had love and once you get it on this vacation and this holiday, when you come back, you know, the mask goes back on, but also you feel like it can't go all the way on because you've given something up.
That might be, last episode we talked about the point of ritual death. That, just as you were talking, I felt the emotions of those scenes.
Yeah.
And it is like a death to have come into your essence and have to go back.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this with my book, with this idea that she leaves Paris and she goes back home and she essentially grieves. Like, she is grieving her, you know, formation of this romance and this love and this, you know, all of the things that she sort of found out about herself. And she goes back and maybe the mask comes up a little bit. Maybe she wants to be back in her essence and she ends up grieving for that.
Because Michael Haig talks about a retreat, that when they kind of come out, try it out, and then retreat, it's a real retreat from fear. Like, I must go back to all my familiar, comfortable behaviours.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, and one of the things about vacation romances, and I think vacations in general, but it's always like, I don't want this to end.
I know, don't you always end up like there? We often
But
go
I do
skiing,
want it to end.
and usually by the end, I'm like, well, let's just move up here. We're going to move up here. We're
Really,
gonna
by
live
the
up
end,
here.
sometimes I'm like, get me home. But maybe I just haven't gone on the
You
right
haven't
holiday.
fallen in love
I
on your
haven't gone
holiday.
on the-
Yeah,
I haven't gone on
you
the
haven't
right
had your
holiday.
romance there yet.
We still have a fantasy that one day we'll spend a whole year and we'll just live up and ski every day and be great.
Yeah. I'm like, and you know, you can't appreciate your holiday unless you come back to your real life and all that, blah, blah, blah.
I do
But
love coming home too. Like, I
Yeah.
agree. There's often
Yeah.
a point where you've been away for a while where you're like, oh, I could go back home now.
Well, I was just thinking about how you're like, do we have to go home? Like, do we have to? And how in Book Lovers, all of Nora's ex-boyfriends don't go back home.
I know.
Like,
Yeah.
none of them go back home.
That
And
is
they're
one of
like,
the
I'm
best
staying.
openings.
So, like, you know.
Yeah, and so then she plays out. So thinking about people hitting their black moment, if you think about, she's had this series of boyfriends who leave her for the country girl. At the end, she meets this guy who has to stay in the country, and she has to come to terms with how that feels
Yeah.
because he doesn't come straight to the city with her. They
No.
have to make it work with him in the country.
Yeah.
yeah.
Spoiler alert, sorry.
Yeah.
Except that's not really what happens.
And
but
like,
yeah.
there's not, yeah.
I know they end up together, but you know the choice she has to make in that moment when she thinks he's going to stay there.
Yeah, well, that's the moment where you think, oh, well, they're never going to be able to work this out because they can't,
Because of his family.
it's too long distance, and they've both kind of indicated that's not going to work.
Well, I suppose it's also talking about the fact that it's saying something about home and how, I don't know what it's saying about it.
But that's
it's saying something.
actually, that's just like an interesting thought, isn't it? That ultimately, vacation romances indicate that even long distance, like you can't, it's not maintainable long term. Like there's this idea of you will eventually need to, like you've gone on holiday, you met someone, but you can't just go back to your life and still see them only occasionally or long distance. Like love is, there's an immediacy and a need to be together. And
certainly in romance novels, I think romance novels push that kind of idea of daily domestic life.
Yeah.
Whereas there are successful couples who do long term.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But there's this, that's what I meant. Like in the romance novel, it's this interconnectedness, it's so much bigger that you have to be together, as in there needs to be something to maintain, because you just can't.
What happens, Georgia? Does she stay
in
Paris? In the end,
I think the idea is that she sort of makes it home, like it has these aspects that feel home-like, and so she ends up going, well,
maybe we don't know yet.
Well, yeah. There's no idea.
Have to read the
who
book.
Knows? Yeah, who knows? I don't know what's going to happen, but I like the idea of her going back.
Yeah, don't spoil your own
and how
book.
it might have been a vacation at one point, but that doesn't mean that vacation lands can't be home eventually too. I don't know.
I think that especially works if one of the characters
is already from there,
has home there, because it's not necessarily about going back to the place of vacation. It's about going back to the human who makes you feel like home.
And it's also about, I suppose, like character as well. If she feels displaced and hasn't felt at home in other places, and a vacation land ends up feeling familiar and helpful and good, like it makes sense that would end up. But like Nora, she, Sunshine Falls was great, but it wasn't where she wanted to be. It wasn't a home. It was
there was no sustainability there for her though as well.
Yeah,
which is something you're very interested in, Kathleen, about women finding their roles and their careers and their and possibilities for the future.
Yeah, which I think you can. It can be written right, and it can be written in a way that does that. And I will give book lovers that it's written in a way that does that. By not having her stay. But, I do like the idea of playing with elements of what that life looks like, because I also like the idea of playing with elements of the different parts of ourselves. I like to have this saying of some people live to work and some people work to live. And I think that that's what you can play with really well in the idea of the small town, because I think one of the things that we maybe hit a little hard in the romance novel is this idea of everything is high stakes. Your career is high stakes. Your romance is high stakes. Your everything is high stakes. And I think...
And that always has to be figured out and worked out.
Yeah, and it's always got to be... everything has to be what you love. And I'm like, that's not... What I like actually is when sometimes people realise that it's okay to have things that you're just doing to feed what you love. Like life is not 100% perfect all the time, and romance doesn't have to be under that pressure to be all the things.
And again, like I think we were talking, I can't remember if it was on air or off air, about privilege.
Yeah.
That's quite privileged to think you have to love everything in your life.
And it's a huge pressure from a feminist perspective. It's a huge pressure that women suffer in a way that is very different. Like we have to be the perfect mothers. And we have to
just read Dear Iowati.
Yes. This is coming from this, to be honest. She says in that this idea of being everything. She says get rid of the saying, I should bring it up, but it will take me too long to find it. But she says get rid of this idea of having it all or women doing it all, or look at her, she's doing it all. And it's like, no, she's just doing what she needs to do to survive in the same way a man is. It's just that there's so much more pressure.
I think that women take on more. Like women, they've never just because they have full careers now doesn't mean that they're not also doing the full domestic thing that they were expected to do at one point.
But that's the problem. That's the problem is that while a woman is doing it all, it gives a man an out to do what he was doing before.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to read that, it's Dear Iowati by Chimamanda Adichie. It's amazing.
It's a must read in my opinion.
Who's that? What does she mean, Dear Iowati?
That's her goddaughter. She's writing a letter. It's like
a letter.
manifesto.
I'm thinking Richard Iowati. That's where my mind went with that. But I was...
it's a letter she writes to her goddaughter because
gorgeous.
Her sister, I think it is, writes to her and says, how do I raise my daughter as a feminist? And so she writes her 15 suggestions on how to raise your daughter as a feminist.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
I would love that for sons as well, dare I say.
But it can apply.
It
but
can apply as
that's
well.
the
It's
thing.
a really good feminist
It's actually
manifesto.
to me, honestly, it's
live.
how to live as a feminist.
Well, I was going to say that what I do find in a lot of romance novels is that the female characters have to like figure out their career or something like that before they can figure out or like enter into a relationship. I'm not sure that sorry, we're getting a little bit off vacation romance, but if we're talking about having it all, I do think that rhetoric is a little bit in romance novels.
Oh, it is totally in.
Yeah, where they can't be with the guy until they've like got the promotion or something like that.
Totally
Do you know what I mean?
And that from a liberal feminist perspective.
and that kind of like frustrates me because I'm like, well, you can be with the guy and he can help you. You like he's your partner. He's your person.
A lot
that
of
you do
us
it with,
figure
like,
it out second. I figured mine out second.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's
I was
like-
married for
Yeah.
several years before I finally figured out what I wanted to
And
do.
like you shouldn't have to navigate all of that on your own independently. Like you can.
I would also
rely
say
on people.
the man shouldn't have to either.
No,
that we
no,
have
no,
all
100%.
these alpha hero types, even if they're not alphas, even if they're cinnamon rolls, they often already have their career or their
Yeah, they have to be
identity.
immediately successful or something like that. Like they're already rich or they're already,
Yeah, and we'll get to our book club book later because I think she does do some interesting things with that
Yeah.
one.
yeah, I have
agree.
so much to say on that.
Yeah, so much. That's really good. Yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else that you guys have that you think vacation romance is important? Wait. No, actually, sorry. I was going somewhere.
She'd just like to rewind that question.
I was going somewhere and now I know what I want to ask instead. I
Okay.
think
Okay.
if we're going to like wrap it up and we're going to think about vacation romance executed well, what are we loving? What is the vacation romance for you?
Oh, good question.
I was going
As
one
in,
way.
like, what is your favorite romance?
Yeah, what's your favorite one?
Well, I mean, one of my favorite romance books of all time is
Book Lovers.
Book Lovers by Emily Henry. But I have talked a lot to you guys about the Moose Spring books that
Yeah.
I really love, and I haven't read them in a while. So you know how sometimes you go back and read and you're like, oh wait, was this my favorite book? But like, I remember reading them and loving them, and I have read them twice. And the first book of that is a vacation romance. The girl goes to Moose Springs on holidays and falls in love. And the ones that follow it, I wouldn't really say a vacation, but they're still set in Moose Springs. And it's Alaska. So, like, we've already covered for me kind of what that is. But the first one's set in the summer. It's like kind of like what you were talking about, Amy, about these, like, it's sort of like a small town and there's like a lake and, it's sort of those elements. The only book that's set in real winter there is the Christmas one. The other two are seasonally different. So it's sort of, for me, it wasn't even necessarily just about that Christmassy, wintry aspect, although I do love that.
It's a location that you love and it feels vacation-like because you yourself are reading it.
I think it's just so far away from my reality.
Yeah.
Like my and I mean, we're Australian, so beach here is very, I think we take that for granted.
Yeah, it's so like just every day.
Like I'm
Yeah.
I'm uninterested in beach.
I mean, I'm not a beach person. Like, I actually hate swimming.
Me either. I don't like the beach either.
Can't think of anything worse.
The sand is like sensory overload. I can't do it.
Yeah, I hate the beach. I like the look of the beach. I like to sit,
Yeah.
like in a house on a balcony.
Yeah. My friend, when we go down to the beach, I will just sit on the sand or like on a towel and read a book. And my friend's like, I'm going to go for a swim. I'm like, you're going to go in there?
Yeah, it's so cold. I don't even own a swimsuit. Okay, that's how much.
Swimming in the ocean.
Oh no!
Amy,
You know what? I could tell that about you, Amy.
Yeah.
I could totally tell that you'd be a beach person.
Vacation romance. Do you have one?
I was thinking about this. I'm not a huge reader, and I think it's because partly I think I would like to see really unique, quirky things. And I think vacation romances maybe tend towards the familiar and the comfortable, like
Yeah, I agree.
the kind of stereotypical fantasy of holidays, which I'm not as interested in. But I will say the bit of You and Me on Vacation that I really loved was the Palm Springs bit.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I was going to say that I like You and Me on Vacation, but I like specific locations in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
the vividness of it. Like it was so unique and so interesting and so weird and just so striking.
Yeah, I
That-
liked
I loved
specific locations in You and Me on Vacation. Can't remember which ones,
Yeah.
but I know that there were like some holidays they went on and I was like, oh, I don't want to read about
Because
this.
setting is one of my absolute favourite things. They can
Yeah.
get the setting right. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what the genre is, but particularly in romance. And I think this is why I used to gravitate towards historical because
Yeah, that makes
there's a
sense.
They spend a lot of time on the setting. Whereas there are some books, I can't remember what I was reading recently. It was one of the books we've been talking about, and I felt like the setting was almost not. Oh, it was Ali Hazelwood. So there's a bit about NASA, but the setting is actually pretty. Like, I didn't really get a sense of Houston at all.
Yeah,
there's
and
a little
it could
bit
be
of
so much
mugginess.
stronger.
Other than the graveyard.
Yeah, the graveyard and then like the muggy
Bit of
heat.
muggy heat.
We actually get more like, because they drive to isn't it New Orleans they drive
yeah,
to?
but even then it's like, I just love it when they revel in the place a bit.
Well, that's what I clearly like Paris and all that sort of stuff. I like Paris.
I love going there.
I like London. I love reading about it. It's like
I think they remind me a little bit of the chick flick. What were the novels that were the chick flick novels in the 90s?
Oh, like Bridget Jonesy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
I think they give me those vibes sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to you
reinvigorating
that for me, Georgia.
Oh goodness!
No pressure.
Just a small job.
No pressure, but just make me fall back in love. Because I'm fine when it's a movie, but a book I do struggle unless it's really vivid.
Yeah.
And when Harry Styles discovers you in London,
Exactly,
can we
and falls in love
please
with
get
me
concert
immediately.
tickets?
I'll work it out.
When he sees you at the back of your
at the seats,
in the back
right all the
row.
way up the top,
and your eyes meet.
and so I was going to say, make a joke that like fan fiction girls make all the time, and like old fangirls, where it's like, you've gone to the concert, you have shaved your entire body, you are in fact ready.
You're a seal.
And then Harry says, "Oh, I like a little bit of hair on it."
She's a seal who slips down onto the stage. She's so slippery, she's got nothing else to do. She slips through his fingers. Sorry. I just think the idea of hairlessness sounds really, like, it makes me think of a completely bald, no
Like
eyebrows.
those little cats. Those little
Yeah. It is a long-term joke about Harry Styles seeing you in the crowd, and you're ready.
Yeah, you're ready to
Let's
go.
Just so you know, that happened to me once, and he waved and winked, and my brother basically broke my arm because he was like, Harry Styles is totally making eye contact with you. I'm so sorry, Georgia, but him and I have already had a thing.
Harry, I'm old enough to be your mother. Not interested.
I think that's kind
You're
of
the one he'll date out of all of us.
Okay. Anyway, enough about Harry Styles, and unfortunately,
But on vacation, he features in The Dream.
sure. And unfortunately, that's the end of Vacation Romance podcast for today.
And next week,
We're
we
doing-
are going to be looking at one of everyone's favourite tropes after enemies to lovers, the fake relationship.
Ooh.
All right,
Harry, we're looking at you.
The fake relationships
gonna
we've been
keep
living
coming
out
up.
at the end of this vacation here.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us, and hopefully, please join us next week to discuss fake relationships.
Bye.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.